The way my life is going, the situation I'm in, and the risks I'm taking in my marriage all come down to the words he said to me on that fateful day. It's just business. That's how I have to look at it. The way things are now. My husband, the love of my life, knew nothing about the agreement I made, the deal I made with the devil, the deal I made with a man I didn't really love as a person. Yes, he is a handsome and strong man, but at the same time he is arrogant, cocky, vain, and pompous. He is also my longtime lover, and I suppose I must somehow love him. I certainly like what he does to me, and has done for me for that matter. Why did I agree to do this? Why do I keep doing this? Years of lies, subterfuge, and deception. All for what? Great sex. Definitely a yes. The adrenaline rush of being at the mercy of my powerful lover. Yes, of course. The feeling of pride that I was able to keep an innocent husband and family in the dark for so long, you can be sure. What amazes me is that I deal with it with a clear conscience. In fact, I enjoy it. I really don't want to stop now. It's part of my life, and it means so much to me. This started so long ago. I must stress that I do not let this affect my husband. As I have already said, he is and always will be the love of my life. My children are very important to me, although my husband does most of the work with them, taking care of them and raising them and such. You see, I'm too busy with work. I love them. Of course I do. And I will protect them above all others, even myself. What my lover gives me is necessary, an important part of my life, but make no mistake, I need my husband and family much more. If I ever had to choose, there is no doubt who and what I would give up. I would certainly miss it. But as long as I don't have to choose, I will continue. So why am I risking something that is so important to me? To explain, I have to go back to my school and university days, the happy, carefree, simple days when I had my fair share of random guys, nothing heavy, just fun evenings generally. I gave my virginity to my first real boyfriend at the end of my senior year. We had fun together. The illicit sex we had and the danger of being caught by our parents only added to the thrill. We both knew there was no future in our relationship. We were both heading to different universities. So when the time came, we ended things amicably. During my first 2 years at university, I didn't want to get too serious with anyone. A few dates did end up in bed, but it was just fun, part of the learning process. I had a couple of steady boyfriends, but none of them lasted more than half a semester. I didn't like any of them. They were good guys, kind and respectful. The sex was okay, of course. Nothing like what I was to experience later, but at the time, I liked it. That all changed early in my senior year when John and I first met at a party. There was an instant attraction between us. Physically, he was my ideal man. He looked handsome and spoke to me as an equal and not as a potential conquest for a night out. We danced, and the way he held me made me feel like I truly belonged to him, safe in his arms. When the party ended, I readily agreed to a follow-up date with him. We met regularly and soon became exclusive. It was obvious that there was something special between us. He respected me for my intelligence, accepted my desire to be the best. We had a similar sense of humor, we enjoyed each other's company, and as our relationship progressed, we discovered that we were more than compatible in bed. He rocked my world, and I think I did the same for him. He was an attentive lover and knew what turned me on, so he made sure my needs were met every time we made love. However, I'm getting ahead of myself in my story. I was on a 4-year course where I had to work in the 3rd year. The university helped us with employment, helped us find companies that could provide training in addition to our curriculum. I was lucky to find a place that wasn't too far from campus, so I could stay in the house I shared with the girls I lived with for my first 2 years. I first met Grant for an interview. His sister Natalie interviewed me first, and then introduced me to him so that he would agree to hire me. He didn't say much, just told me about the company and what they do, explaining that he and Natalie jointly inherited the company from their father. When he spoke to me, there was an expression in his eyes that I found slightly frightening, an expression that I could not fully understand. I was used to men mentally undressing me, as I'm sure most women were, but this was something more. He seemed to be looking not just at my body through my clothes, but straight into my soul. It sent shivers down my spine as I forced myself to remain calm and meet his penetrating gaze. The meaning of this view became clear to me only many years later, and it lies at the heart of my story. At that moment, however, I was pleasantly surprised when, after looking at me silently for a long time, he turned his attention to his sister to tell her that he was pleased with her choice. From my first day, Natalie took me under her wing and was kind to me, making sure the work I was assigned was meaningful and beneficial to my education. She made sure I understood what I was doing and why I was part of the team, and the others welcomed me. The work was hard but rewarding, and I learned a lot. Grant was the figurehead of the company, the salesman, if you will. He traveled regularly to implement the proposals that we had prepared in the office. He was always very professional in his interactions with us employees in the office, but I had little direct interaction with him. Shortly after I started working there, we were rewarded with a team lunch. After our meal, we continued dancing. The treat was to celebrate success in winning a lucrative contract, and although I had little to contribute, I was invited to join them, as in all subsequent cases. During the first outing, the men on the team flirted with me, and to some extent I tried my best. It was all good, harmless fun. Since all the men except one were married, I made it clear that it was just fun. I had no interest in pursuing anything further with any of them. Grant seemed somewhat distant from us, with the possible exception of Cindy, who was about 5 years older than me. I thought I saw a look pass between them, a brief, intimate exchange that no one else seemed to see. I knew she was married because she told me about her husband and children over dinner one day, so I was a little surprised by what I thought I saw. Apart from this brief interaction, nothing else seems to be wrong. The rest of the team, including Cindy and Grant, seemed at ease with each other and regularly swapped dance partners. Perhaps I was mistaken, reading too much into the very short conversation between them. My chance to become Grant's partner came quite late, and it was just one dance. He was a true gentleman throughout my short stay with him and smiled as he thanked me for being a good partner. After that first meeting, I noticed that guys stopped flirting with me. They laughed and joked with me, but the sexual overtones disappeared. Many years later, I learned that Grant had made it clear to them that they needed to leave me alone. We got together every couple of months. Everyone enjoyed every occasion, and I didn't see anything else between Cindy and Grant, so maybe I was imagining it after all. Whenever it was my turn to slow dance with Grant, he would hold me tightly to him. And although I didn't really get attached to the man, I enjoyed dancing with him. He had a way of carrying himself, a posture that made him feel strong, in control, even dominant. I respected him and I felt safe with him. While we were together, he seemed to focus on me, on my pleasure, yet he was always a gentleman. Over time, I began to feel slightly disappointed that he did not take any liberties with me. His hands never moved away, and he did not press against me inappropriately. I'm not sure how I would have handled it if he had, although I convinced myself that he was well behaved. I lived with my student friends not far from the university, so I met them most weekends. Of course, sometimes I liked the company of men, but, as in previous years, nothing permanent or serious. When my friends went home during the Christmas holidays, I had to work, so I was left at home alone, and of course there was an office Christmas party coming up. I splashed out on the new dress and decided in advance to let my hair down. Tom, the only single guy on the team, agreed to accompany me, and we sat with 3 others from our team who were with their partners. We had a great time. One thing I noticed was that, although Cindy was with her husband, I saw her sneak out of the room alone, and Grant followed her a few minutes later. Cindy's husband sat laughing with the other members of our team and seemed oblivious to his wife's absence. I saw Grant come back into the room about 20 minutes later. Cindy was still missing. I didn't actually see her come back, but the next thing I noticed was that she was back in her seat at the table. Of course, I had a couple of dances with Grant, and I was pleased when he complimented me on my dress. We'd both had a little to drink by then, and I'll admit, I snuggled up to him maybe a little closer than usual. I was impressed by what I briefly felt between us. However, he seemed slightly embarrassed by this and gently moved me away from his body with a smile. At the next song, he tapped Tom on the shoulder to switch partners. I felt a pang of disappointment at what felt like a rejection, so I pressed seductively into Tom, who didn't seem to mind. At the end of the evening, Tom called a taxi and drove with me to my den. Asking the driver to wait, he walked me to my door. We were both drinking and were quite cheerful, so I pulled him towards me to press my lips to his. He kissed back with some passion until we pulled away from each other, and I breathlessly invited him in. We both knew what I was offering, so imagine my surprise when he refused, whispering, "Thank you. You're great, but I can't." Before I could ask why or even say anything else, he returned to the waiting taxi and drove off. Monday morning, nothing was said. Tom greeted me with a smile and told me how much he enjoyed my company. It was too public for me to ask about his sudden departure, so I just smiled and walked to my desk. Grant arrived about 5 minutes later and asked me to join him in his office. This was unusual. I followed him and took the offered place when he took off his jacket. "Did you have a good time on Saturday night?" I answered in the affirmative. He smiled and continued. "Well, I enjoyed dancing with you. You looked great. Young Tom behaved well and brought you home safe and sound." Once again, my answer was positive. "I am glad to hear it." We then talked about the work I was doing, whether I liked it, whether it was something I was interested in, and things like that. Once he listened to my answers, he seemed a little distracted, then looked at his computer. "I would like to discuss your successes and plans for the future in the new year. When we get back, we'll do something. Maybe have an informal meeting somewhere." Then he paused and looked thoughtful for a long time, and then said, "Okay, that's all for now. Have a good rest." That's it. I was sent. As I was leaving his office, Cindy walked past me to enter his office. She looked a little tense, and I noticed that she had closed the door tightly behind her. I was too busy to notice when the door opened, but the next time I saw it, Cindy had returned to her desk and looked much more relaxed than when she walked past me into the office. Later that day, I mentioned to Natalie about my meeting with Grant and that Grant wanted to talk to me later. She smiled. "That's good. He likes you. We both think you'll fit in well with us. You and I will talk again, too." I went home to my family for Christmas, staying until the new year. It was nice to be home with my parents and see old friends. I met my old boyfriend and his new partner. He seemed happy enough. When I returned to work, I was relaxed and engaged in work like the rest of the team. Over time, I was able to offer more and really enjoyed the opportunity to expand my experience. One of my concerns was that Grant seemed a little more distant towards me and the rest of the team. He seemed distracted at times and barely spoke to me. In particular, he did not mention our meeting later. We met as a team a couple more times, and I danced with Grant. But for some reason, everything was different. Time seemed to fly by, and my secondment was coming to an end when Grant called me into his office one Monday morning. "Are you free on Friday evening?" I told him yes. "Okay. I'll pick you up at 7 o'clock. We can talk about your future, get dressed for food, and maybe we'll dance a little." I nodded in agreement before he added, "Okay, now I think Natalie would like to see you in the conference room." Natalie told me that they were pleased with my work and impressed with my work ethic. She handed me a sealed envelope, which she said contained the university assessment forms she had filled out for me, as well as a letter to my course instructor. When she stood up to announce the end of our meeting, she asked, "Has Grant made an appointment with you this week?" I said, "Yes, he did it." "Okay, I know he has an offer for you." Her comment got me thinking, what kind of sentence is this? Why after work, in a restaurant, at a dance? I wasn't interested in a relationship with him after all. I didn't really like him, of course, in that sense. And from his reaction when we danced, I was sure that the feeling was mutual. The week seemed to last forever as I puzzled over what would happen at our meeting. Friday came and he was out of the office all day, so I couldn't gauge his mood. It was a rush, but I was ready at the appointed time. I wore a modest, little black dress. It wasn't too short and showed just a decent amount of cleavage. My favorite heels and new underwear completed my outfit. He knocked on my door just in time and led me to his car. Imagine my surprise when I saw Natalie there and another man I had never met before. Grant held the front passenger door open for me, and as I slid into the seat, Natalie introduced me to her husband. Ralph smiled and said, "Hello, nice to finally meet you." Soon we were sitting in a cozy restaurant with a drink in our hands. Grant spoke first. "Thank you for joining us this evening. Natalie and I want to discuss your future, particularly where it could be mutually beneficial. We thought an informal conversation in a relaxed atmosphere would be best." Once our food was ordered, Natalie said that they both thought I would fit in well and that, provided I got the degree I was supposed to, I should talk to them about a permanent position immediately after graduation. They handed me a draft employment contract that detailed the remuneration package they were willing to offer. It was better than I expected. Then, when I finished reading, Grant smiled and added, "We are very interested in your services, so please read this." He handed me a piece of paper. "This is a preliminary offer, an advance, if you will, to help you get through next year." Natalie took the floor. "We hope this will put us in an advantageous position for your future services." I was speechless. They were going to give me a weekly allowance that would cover my living expenses for the next school year. I think my mouth must have been slightly open when she continued. "There are no strings attached to our offer. You are free to live your life as you see fit. We just hope you continue to work hard and then call us first when you graduate." What could I say? My smile must have given me away. Maybe even the tears in my eyes gave them a clue. Grant saved me. Enough business talk for today. Let's enjoy the food and the rest of the evening. What could I say? I managed to thank them and promised not to let them down. The food was wonderful, and we danced until late. They dropped me off at midnight. Grant walked me to my door, and although I was hesitant, I kissed him on the cheek as I thought it was just polite. He didn't seem to mind too much. It took me a couple of weeks to get back into the routine of university life, and I had to get used to a couple of new roommates. However, it was during the usual round of freshman parties that I met my future husband. We were the same age, and he was also about to start his senior year. He had a 3-year course, but he had a year to travel after school, so now he's caught up with me after I've been for 4 years. As I mentioned earlier, we quickly realized that we were made for each other and were soon making plans for our future life together. We agreed that once we each had a suitable career, we would get married. Of course, I was ahead in achieving this goal, but he was smart, so I knew it wouldn't be long before we could move forward with our lives. Despite wanting to spend as much time with each other as possible, we both worked hard and got the good degrees we needed. Upon graduation, I immediately accepted Natalie and Grant's offer, while John soon found the job he wanted. We opened a savings account together and planned our wedding for June. My job was what I expected. I had a few things to learn, but I fit right into the team as if I had never left. As before, Natalie was friendly and helpful. Grant, not so much. He was the same as I remembered. Aloof at times, abrupt, sometimes even rude, but overall he was businesslike and very professional. We had our occasional holiday nights, and my feelings for Grant remained the same. I had my turn to dance with him, and he kept me at arm's length, especially during the slow dances. I don't know why, but it irritated me a little, although I didn't really like him, but I found his attitude, his demeanor, very attractive. As I said, he felt strong, powerful, even charismatic. All I knew was that when I was in his arms, my body responded to him, even if my mind didn't want it to. It was a strange feeling. I certainly didn't have any romantic feelings for him, and I had no intention of getting close to him. The work became more and more interesting. Natalie took me around the company as part of my training. I learned a lot, but I wondered where my future workplace was. It seemed that as soon as I found out what I was doing at a particular job, she translated me to the next one. One day I asked for a meeting to discuss this. She explained that with my education I could handle any job, so she wanted me to get a thorough understanding of the entire company, and then when the time came, I would be promoted according to my knowledge and position. One of the issues I needed to discuss was that, as a young married woman, I would soon want to have children. Natalie smiled and said, "Of course you will, and I want to assure you that we will support you in everything." I wondered how it was possible that I would need to take time off, maybe even resign, to take care of any children we might have. She brushed it off with, "I'm sure your husband will support you if you decide to stay at work. We will make sure you get help." And so, when 18 months later I told Natalie that I was pregnant, she transferred me to our accounting department. I had previously worked there, so I knew what was needed. For the next 5 months, I was remote, with a home office, a computer connected to the company server, and the task of modifying our financial systems to cope with remote management. I was encouraged to work from home to check systems if I had a busy day or a clinic visit. My son Aaron was born without complications, and Natalie took a break for the first few weeks, while I breastfed and adjusted to the routine of a new mother. In fact, she visited me regularly, often working in my home office all day. Once things got better for me and John got used to being a hands-on dad, I had to go to the office 1 day a week. We developed a procedure to do this, and all was well in my world. The days at the office gradually increased, and we hired an au pair to help with the baby.